we are about 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, and we thought, who better to join us leading up to the draft every week than our buddy Mike Mayock. Mike, we appreciate having you back.
Love being here. How you guys doing today?
What's up, Mike? Appreciate it, brother.
Hey, all good. All good. Want to hear what your guys are thinking?
What we're thinking.
What we're thinking.
Dude, I don't know anything. Dude, that's what you're for, quite honestly. Do you love digging into draft stuff, just sort of like watching tape and thinking about how the teams are going to operate? Is this something that you find exciting, I guess?
You know what? When the Raiders fired me, I was like, I'm never going to look at another tape of a draft pick again. I'm done.
Wow.
And, of course, that lasted for about 5 months. And the next thing you know, I'm watching, the top 100 players. And now I work as a consultant for some people from Consumer Sports and some other people. And it's like I did the top 125 players plus or minus, which is an awful lot of tape work. But what is intriguing to me is just when you get into this time frame, I get goosebumps. I start thinking about what's going on in the Eagles building right now. And, they're finishing up the pro day circuit, even though there's still a few more. They've got the 30 visits going, which mean an awful lot more than people think. The coaches are starting to get ready for their OTAs, and their minds are kind of drifting away from the draft, but the scouts are trying to finalize their board. And it's just really exciting because it's just, whoever handles their board correctly ends up winning the draft. And you might not know for a couple of years, but Howie Roseman and the Eagles have been the best in the business for the last several years.
Mike, great thing about having you on with us, man, is you understand this thing from both perspectives. You've done the breaking down of tapes and breaking down prospects from a network standpoint and from an analyst standpoint, but you've also done it where it really matters, which is in that front office. You just mentioned something about the draft board. I'm wondering, for every team, Eagles included, at this stage with 2 weeks left to go, how close are teams to sort of having their draft board finalized? In other words, the Eagles are at the back of the draft, so I guess it may be a little harder, but you're 2 weeks away. Are you still in that evaluation period? Have you set the draft board up yet? Where are teams typically at 2 weeks out from the draft?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ike. And really what it comes down to is you've already pretty much stacked your board by position.
Okay.
And you've got a really good feel for that. There might be a couple of questions that need to be answered at 30 visits or medical kind of things. But for the most part, from top to bottom by position, you've stacked your board. The harder part is the transition from by position to the overall ranking when you mix all the positions together. And what I mean by that is, you might have 10 players with an identical grade. Say you give them a 68, and it's going to be Howie's job and a couple of his top-ranking people that he trusts the most in that building over the next 10 days. They're basically going to sit down and say, you know what, the 68 corner we like a lot better than the 68 center, but that 68 edge, I'm going to put them right in between. And so you're really taking all the grades on your board, and you got to break them up so you have one final comprehensive board. And that's typically done, plus or minus a week before the draft. And then the next level of is if you're picking in the top 5, you have a pretty good idea who you're going to be picking from.
Yeah.
If you're picking 32, then you've got to be a little more nimble. And what I mean by that, and the good teams, the good organizations typically are drafting late, right? So teams like Baltimore, Kansas City, Philadelphia, New England when Belichick was there. I got to understand back in the day how these guys thought of things. And, the bottom line is that all of them sit there and go, I can't pick who's going to be there at 27 if I'm Baltimore or 32 if I'm Philly. So there's a group of 4 or 5 players that if you have to pick and stick, if you can't move up or back, you got at least 5 guys that you're good with any one of them. Any of the 5 we're good with, but at least one of them will be there. But you're also nimble enough to say, hell, if somebody starts sliding, we're going to move up and go get them. I mean, that's who we are. That's why we're a good franchise.
Yeah.
And the flip side is you can't be afraid to move back. Yeah, you'll move back in the second round, pick up extra picks, and move on from there. And I think all the franchises that I just mentioned are not afraid to move up, move back, trade for existing players. I mean, and, Howie Roseman personifies all that. He loves the trades. He loves moving up and back, whether it's A.J. Brown or DeAndre Swift or what, he does more of that than anybody in the league. And again, the Eagles are the best right now in the league at understanding their draft board.
Talking to Mike Mayock about the NFL draft, I think that there was an interesting thing you just brought up about it's very easy to rank guys within position group, but all of a sudden when you're not ranking in position group, it's not an apples to apples comparison. So you could have a guy who's an 82 or something as a safety and a guy who's a 75 as an edge, but you value edge more than you value safety, and all of a sudden the math gets a little more difficult when you're actually figuring out which player to take when you're in the draft. That's an interesting dynamic I hadn't really considered before.
Yeah, and it's not even just as simple as, I like the edge over the safety because an edge is a more important position, but it's also what is the best fit for our team? Which player fits better? It's not just, where if you have an area of need and you have three players with the exact same grade, then it's pretty obvious. If you need an edge and one of them's an edge, you take that player, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of gray areas, and that's what I love about the nuance of setting that final board.
So, Mike, let me ask you this, and what you're doing now is almost all tape, right? But when you're a GM, there's more than just the tape that comes into like selecting a player. So when you look at performance in college, combine stuff, and then conversations with the player or people around the player to get sort of character, work ethic. I guess it's impossible to get from you how you rank those things, but I guess I'm just sort of curious what you rank above what else, and how those fit together.
Yeah. And another great question. I mean, the bottom line, I think for most general managers is the tape is the holy grail. And everything else is a cross-check. So when you go to the combine, and I always used to say to the guys at the NFL Network, and then when I got with the Raiders, and I used to drive them all crazy, I'd be like, look, fast guys run fast, slow guys run slow. It's only a story if the opposite occurs. Like, I don't care if so-and-so ran 4.26. We all knew he was going to. But if a wideout that we think is going to run 4.65 runs 4.42, now we got to go back to the tape and reevaluate. Were we wrong, or did the kid just get a great start? Is he a track star? There's so much that goes into all of those things that at this time of year, I just think this is the most fun when you're trying to put all those different pieces together and come up with that composite.
So moving around within the draft, I'm going to bring up one specific instance from the Eagles where it didn't go well, and it felt like from the outside they were panicking and they didn't know what to do, and it was the year they took Marcus Smith. They got to their pick and they traded back, and it just seemed like they froze. What is going into the draft, what is the difference between a team that is good at maneuvering and a team that isn't good at maneuvering?
It's preparation and confidence and a chain of command that is that everybody understands. Yeah. You can't be sitting there looking for your owner or your head coach and your offensive line coach. You've got to be ready to go and pull a trigger. And if you need to talk to somebody quickly, that's fine. But in the first round, you get 10 minutes. Most of the rest of the rounds, you get significantly less. So I used to think that some teams panicked, and you kind of wanted to hammer at them a little bit. Call them on the clock with 4 minutes left. Hey, you want to do this? Right. And see if they make a mistake. And it really comes down to preparation, both as far as knowing in advance. For instance, we mentioned first-round picks already, but you're talking every really good GM I've ever met knows that on day one, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Day two, second and third round, I've got one pick in each round. Okay, in each round, I've got these 5 players that are good for me. The worst-case scenario is that all 5 players are gone, and you can't move up or back. That's worst-case scenario, right?
Yeah.
That rarely ever happens. It happened one year in New England and they took an offensive lineman from Fresno State at 32 that nobody knew. He was supposed to be a third-round pick, and he ended up going to about 8 to 10 Pro Bowls. And the reason, I talked to Belichick later, the reason was he just knew he was going to be he's like, my draft board was wiped out. We couldn't move either direction. What was important was at that moment we take a good, solid football player. That's all.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that.
Most of us feel like the Eagles might, going into this draft, have to replace the talent they lost on defense, right? So they, number one defense from a year ago, not many open spots on the offensive side. I guess maybe tight end, depending on what they do with depending on what they do with Dallas Goedert. But there are a lot of holes to be filled on the defensive side. I'm looking at the edge and the corners. What are you hearing about? Like, what's the strength on the defensive side of the ball this year in the draft early? Is it D linemen? You got secondary players. What are you hearing is the strength at those positions?
Well, I think defensive tackle might be the deepest position in the draft, along with tight end. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean you have to take one in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if Walter Nolan or Dirk Harmon's there at 32, you'd be like, awesome. That's really good. But Malachi Starks, what if he's there? Michael Williams, the edge, what if he's there? I'm kind of with you, Ike, that both edge and corner in this particular draft, like I look at that corner pool and say I'd like to get one of the top guys and I'd rather not be taking my chances down in the third round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are 4 corners that could potentially be there at 32. Siobhan Revelle from East Carolina, Azariah Thomas from Florida State, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky, and Trey Amos from Ole Miss. Out of that group of 4, I'm guessing 2 will be there and at least 1. So I don't know how Howie and the Eagles feel about that group, but I look at it that way. Like that group, out of those 4 guys, I could find 2 I really like, and hopefully one of them would be there. I love Azariah Thomas higher than most people, but he's a press corner, and Vic Fangio would have to figure out whether or not he could play off in his system to the degree necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Amos has played inside and outside. I love him too. Maxwell Hairston.
That's my guy right there. I like him.
Let me tell you something. He might be the most he is the most gifted of that group. My only concern was I didn't think he was tough at all in tackling.
Oh, hell!
When you dig deeper, he missed 7 games last year with a shoulder, and if you go back to 23, his tape's a little better on the physical side. So, I mean, he can run, he's fluid, he can cover.
Yeah.
This year he struggled getting guys on the ground, and that bothered me. But I give him a little bit of a pass because of the shoulder. But Ike, your eye is good. He's really gifted. Like he's gifted at a higher level than the 32nd pick.
Mike, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt there. Mike Mayock with us here. Mike, one more from me. I've read before, we talk about trading up, trading down, and I've seen the chart on the internet about the value of each particular pick,
right.
And if you want to move up this many spots, it'll cost this. Is that something that general managers do look at, that chart of value, or is it more of a gut, looking at it and saying it's worth that to me? Do you assign values to picks that way?
When you realize the amount of time you have to figure something out, you need a system. And what you're referring to is the old Jimmy Johnson point grade system.
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed that all 32 teams used it or a variation of it, and they still do.
Wow.
And some of us even traded would send our point chart to another team before the draft.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, this is what we're using. Like if we get on the clock, what you're looking is, you're not always looking like win trades. You're looking for fair trade for both sides, because you only have a minute amount of time to finish the transaction. It's not like it's the off season and you got 3 months to make a deal. You're on the clock with 4 minutes. And I'll tell you, I had one of our analytics guys on a laptop sitting next to me, and when trade requests came in, he would put in all the point totals immediately and show me that, like, we were minus 102 points on a proposition by Washington. And I'd be like, that's bullshit. I mean, excuse me, that's BS.
We got you.
What we need to do is we need a fourth this year or a third next year to even this out, or no trade. And I know they're looking at their chart, and I'm looking at my chart, and it really does help facilitate trades when you're under time pressure.
That is so interesting, Mike. It's such a good thing to, now that you explain it, but basically telling a team, here's what everything costs. You know, if we get deep in, here's how we value everything. Sending it to another team just would give you an advantage in speed, and I had never considered that. It's just the NFL draft. I've watched a lot of NBA drafts in my life, and I've watched both, but NBA is what I focused on. And it's different because it's only 2 rounds, and you really do have general managers trying to win trades in a way that is not quite the same here when you're dealing with this quantity of players and that little time, you know?
I'm not trying to say we're not trying to win trades, but if you really need to move up to get a player, what you're trying to do is make a fair trade for both sides so you can go get the guy you want. But if you know somebody's moving up for a quarterback, or you know who they've got, trust me, there are a lot of trades that, based on the trade chart, get done because one team has another over the barrel.
Right.
So it's not like we're saying every trade's fair. No. But if both sides can get to the place very quickly on a fair trade and they both get what they want, most of the time, that's fine. What's
it like to deal with Howie? In that, have you had much interaction with him in that way?
He's really good, and he and I go back a lot of years, man. And his reputation early in his career was kind of like, be careful. He's smarter than the rest of us, and he's going to try and win every trade. And I think as time has evolved, number one, he is the smartest amongst all of us. And number 2, what I loved about him is when you got him on the phone, he was trying proactively to make a deal. Like he wasn't trying to shoot down. If you had an original idea that he hadn't thought of, he'd take a step back and go, you know what, that might make some sense. Let me talk to Jeffrey. I'll call you right back. Or he might say, hey, Mike, have you thought about it this way? Can we get it done? And in the, I think, what year was it? 21. We were getting close to the trade deadline, and he and I were working on a potential deal that didn't happen. But I love dealing with him because it didn't matter if you called him at 2 a.m. or 9 p.m. or whatever, he was proactively trying to get a deal done, as opposed to just trying to shoot stuff down. And I've got a lot of respect for him for everything he does in that building.
You said 21. I immediately started thinking, like, who did we want from the Raiders back in 21?
Well, that was the year Derek Carr had, the 85% completion percentage game against the Eagles?
Yeah. But I don't know what time in 21 this happened. I'm saying, I was just wondering, Mike, as soon as you said 21, my mind went like, were we trying to get Antonio Brown? What were we doing? Yeah. I don't know who we were trying to get.
No, Antonio Brown was 19.
Oh, was he 19? Okay.
That was a disaster, but
no, you don't have to tell me. I just started thinking as soon as you said it, I started thinking.
No, I'm not going to tell you, but the bottom line is that game was in Vegas, and I told my wife before the game, I said, honey, if we ever want to move back to Philly, we got to win this game today. because we both know Philly, and I can't go home without bragging rights.
All right, Mike. Well, we really appreciate this. Was enlightening, actually, really interesting. We look forward to
good stuff.
We will talk to you next Wednesday, and then talk to you before the draft. This was great, and we look forward to breaking down more specifically Eagles stuff the next time we talk to you.
100%. Look forward to it, boys.
All right, thanks, Mike.